All right, good morning, everyone. It's just after 11, so we'll go ahead and begin. Welcome to another United Fresh Live CEA workshop. Today we'll be talking about retail partners' perspective on the value of CEA. I'm Erin Hutchison with United Fresh Produce Association. And before we begin, I do just want to review a quick couple of housekeeping items. All attendee lines are muted today except for our panelists. At the end of the session, we are going to have some time for Q&A. So throughout the session, please go ahead and type any questions you have into the Q&A box. We will ask them anonymously to our speakers and try to get to as many as possible. And just a quick reminder that this session is being recorded. Leading us through today's discussion is going to be Marnie Carlin. Marnie is the Executive Director of the CEA Food Safety Coalition and has really done a wonderful job putting together some panels for us today, and I think you're really going to enjoy this one as well. Marnie?
Thanks so much, Erin. I just wanted to give a really quick overview of the CEA Food Safety Coalition, who we are, before we jump into this really exciting panel that will be moderated by Whit Grebitus from And Now You Know. But first, just a quick moment about the coalition. We are an independent and member-governed organization whose membership is made up of controlled environment leafy greens growers and turnkey solutions providers who subject their production processes to external audit. We were established to develop credible, strong, and appropriate food safety standards for CEA leafy greens production, educate consumers and regulators on controlled environment growing, and communicate the value of controlled environment agriculture. We are so excited that we've been able to partner with United Fresh this year to offer a great lineup of educational sessions every day of this virtual conference. And today's is going to be, I'm thrilled about today's. But quickly, if you missed any of our other sessions, I know that the recordings are available on the United Fresh site. And please navigate over and take a look. We had panels introducing the coalition, including some of our board members. We had a panel on the opportunities and challenges in food safety that are unique to CEA leafy greens. And we also had a really interesting panel on how CEA can uniquely be agile in its response to business disruptions, such as the COVID-19 pandemic. I'd also welcome you to swing by our booth virtually. I'll be there all afternoon and would love to get to know you and chat a little bit. But now I'd love to just send it over to Whit from And Now You Know to host this really exciting panel talking about the retail and distribution perspective on the value of CEA production. Whit, it's all yours.
Thank you so much, Marnie. Thanks for the introduction, and again, thank you very much for all the invaluable assistance of putting this panel together with me. I really appreciate the opportunity. So, like Marnie said, my name is Whit Grebitus. I'm the Vice President of Sales for Now You Know and the Snack Magazine. I'm thrilled to be here this morning at United Fresh 2020. We will be discussing the value of controlled environment agriculture and getting our retail partners' perspective on that. More specifically, we will be talking about the importance that CEA companies are playing in the leafy green space in particular, which is rapidly growing with multiple retailers and distributors across the country. A lot of surveys and data have shown that consumers want clean packaged goods to help with peace of mind and enhance their perception of food safety measures, as well as access to local products to help sustain the local economies they live in, which is certainly present right now. Before we get too far into the meat of the discussion, though, I'd like to introduce our panel. I'm thrilled to be joined by Nick Bertram this morning, President and CEO of Giant Food Stores. Nick, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Whit, and good morning to everyone.
Also joining us is Greg Kurkjian, the Vice President of Sales and Marketing for the Castellini companies. Greg, great to see you. I see you went with the fancy blue screen technology this morning. I'm envious.
I watched your workshop from yesterday and I didn't want to come up short, so that was a last minute addition. But yeah, thanks for recognizing that effort.
Absolutely. Also with us today is Jonathan Steffy, who's Vice President and General Manager of Four Seasons Produce. Jonathan, good morning. How are you?
Doing well. Good to be here, everybody.
All right, we're all here. We're all awake. Let's do this. Let's get started. And for our viewers, like Erin said, we will have a Q&A immediately following the discussion, so please feel free to stick around and submit your questions, and we will get to them. This first question is to all three of our panelists. A lot of retailers and distributors are making a local more of a permanent offering within local supermarkets and in their distributor operations. in response to consumer demand for fresher produce that came from nearby facilities. Why did each of you choose to work with CEA growers in the first place, and what motivated that decision? And Nick, we'll lead off with you.
All right, sounds good. Well, I think our particular brand called Giant or Martin's or Giant Heirloom Market, we're most proud of the produce department. Fruit and veg is kind of the cornerstone of our offer, and it's we would call it our signature department, and customers continue to give us feedback for that. And one of the reasons why is because if you shop in our stores, you often see the names of farms that you recognize or cities and towns that you recognize. And it just adds a bit more credibility to what the offer looks like inside of our stores. And we're really proud of that. We treasure our farmer relationships. And one of the things that I love about studying agriculture over centuries is that it's typically the most innovative of any discipline that you have in the history of the world. Farmers and growers are constantly innovating, constantly creating something that's new and new ways to feed civilization. CEA is just, in my opinion, the latest example of that ingenuity and innovation that's taken place. And we're really happy to offer that to our shoppers. There's a growing awareness of it. You know, it's often distinctive in packaging, but it's often also distinctive in taste or in texture or even in the color of the product itself in the leafy green category. Others as well, you know, hothouse peppers, et cetera. So it's something that consumers typically did not know about historically, but now it's really front of mind and it's a growing and an emerging category. So we just simply represent our customers and the 1.3 million households that shop us every week. We're trying to do what it is that they want, and they're leaning into that category. So our produce team is doing the same.
Understandable. Why ignore a positive trend if it benefits your business and it benefits your customers? It's kind of a win-win. Greg, your thoughts?
Yeah, it follows a lot of what Nick had said. I mean, we're reacting to our customers, which serve the consumer. Our customers really insist upon their distributor partner, wholesaler partner, keeping our finger on the pulse of the business on innovation is really probably the first thing that drew us to CEA. Our customers always want us to bring them the best of innovation and produce. The other thing that they insist upon when you talk about the consumer is quality. And it's hard to argue that these CEA products, leafy greens, don't bring both of those in a very large way. At the same time, the Castellini company in the Midwest, we've got one of the largest organic footprints east of the Mississippi. We have not seen a decline in our organic sales, specifically of salads, upon the introduction of CEA products, and we've had a tremendous success with a number of CEA leafy green companies. We really see that the consumer wants both options, and I think it's been good for the overall category or the consumer that looks for the same features and benefits and products that they look for organic products they have in the CEA products. The other big thing that drives our piece is local. And CEA plays right into that. Much of our business on the conventional and organic side is driven by local suppliers. This aligns with that position as well. With operations within Cincinnati, there's probably 4 or 5 different CEA operations within the 100 miles of our location here. So really those things, the consumer drives us there and our customer drives us there, quality innovation.
Okay, and Jonathan, Four Seasons perspective.
Sure. So not unlike what Nick and Greg have already shared, consumers are really looking to connect with local. And when there's a CEA leafy green option that, identifies with an area that they feel like is close to them, that's definitely a win, and there's demand for that. And so as a wholesale distributor serving independent retailers, natural food stores, food co-ops in the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast, we have to be their buying arm and aggregate demand for them. And so when we can be a final mile provider for a CEA producer and provide the critical mass coming to our facility and then back out in the smaller quantities with a frequency of delivery to these independent retailers and natural food stores, that's what can create the win for us. And so it's been exciting to see the development, and we've been, for seasons as an observer, we've been, seeing these greenhouses come up and, or vertical growing and so forth, getting bigger and bigger over the years, and then to become involved with it, where there's real critical mass demand from the retailers because the consumer gets the story. That's been exciting to see here, especially lately.
Outstanding. Nick, this question is for you, and I think you've done a good job of establishing, the leadership position that Giant is taking when it comes to sourcing local produce. And you're making that a priority both for your company and your consumers. How do CEA leafy greens specifically fit into that strategy, and how do those benefits help differentiate you from your competitors?
Yeah, I think local and actually claiming local do offer differentiation if it's real and if it's true. And that's why I think you need to have transparency on the spot that it's actually grown in. When I think of CEA, I mean, there's a lot of different probably players that I could talk about, but it's hard not to talk about Leafy Green and Bright Farm, who we've worked with really, I think, since 2016 out of Culpeper, Virginia. We have stores there as well, actually, a great store in Culpeper. And that relationship really yielded, I think, a lot more credibility for our consumer, but also knowledge for our category teams and our buyers. And it became a fruitful relationship. But it became even more important in 2019 because we were able to start to lay the groundwork for the Sealands Grove growing facility, which is right inside of Pennsylvania where the bulk of our stores are at. That grand opened this year, and so now it's like 90 minutes distance between our perishable distribution center and the place where leafy greens are grown through Bright Farm. So we're very excited about that. And it stands out because now we can say that it is PA preferred. It's, we're the first retailer in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania that actually took the step of putting that on shelf edge communication in dry grocery, but also across all of our fresh offer as well, just to really unify that. And it's because we are desperate to see local farmers and local food manufacturers thrive and do great things. And so anything we can do to draw consumer attention to it, I think is a positive for the consumer because, again, they have pride in knowing that they're helping their neighbors or people that are close, but also just, the quality, the lack of dwell time, the speed to shelf, from farm to fork is a phrase that I think many players like to use. I mean, it is absolutely differentiating because it's truly local in this particular example.
Got it. And thank you for mentioning Bright Farms. I want to give a quick shout out to Matt Grant from Bright Farms, who along with Marnie helped put this panel together and was instrumental in basically making my job really easy this morning. So thank you very much, Matt. I hope you're in the audience. Greg, as one of the largest distributors in the Midwest, Castellini works with a lot of restaurant and food service customers, obviously. How do CEA leafy greens fit into Castellini's food service strategy?
Yeah, it's definitely part of our food service strategy moving forward. I will say there's a lot more opportunity here yet to be developed that we've already developed on the retail side, but I think it plays a significant role. Just with the supply chain challenges of the COVID situation, having product is essential, and the CEA leafy green operations have a distinct advantage versus the large commercial growers coming from the coast. So just having that supply for our food service customers is important, but I think the work we need to do is to educate the restaurant operators, the broadline food service operators, that there's benefits for both of them. It's difficult for a broadline food service distributor to add duplicate SKUs. Just considering organics, having a conventional item and an organic item, add in, a CEA leafy green, and it makes it even more complicated. But I think there's a way to get that done. And really the benefit, and I think the opportunity, is with more of the fine dining or white tablecloth operators, where really the customer experience is critical. They have high expectations, and these CEA leafy greens will deliver upon that. They'll have the extra shelf life that the food service operator needs. They'll have the quality going into the restaurant, and the consumer experience is going to be second to none with the quality and the taste profiles that these leafy greens deliver. So lots of work to do on the food service side, but we see plenty of opportunity. On the retailer side, in particular with our independent retailers, We went to work with a number of our CEA suppliers, but one that stood out was the work we did with Bright Farms. And I think it's important to communicate not only to the retailer and educate them on these products, but Bright Farms brought us a complete set of merchandising materials, point of sale materials, if you will, that our merchandising team went out and installed upon the rollout. And this communication of what the benefits and features are of these products is critical upon rollout. And we had a great success. It's been about 2 years now, and it is now a product line that we'll continue to carry and continues to grow. So different success levels between food service and retail, but I think communication and education is going to be the key to further penetration into the food service segment.
Yeah, as a follow-up, Greg, would you say it's premature to say that independent retailers and restaurants that you work with are embracing CEA leafy greens? Is it trending up? Is it constant, or is it still kind of at the initial standpoint?
I think all retail. When you talk about retail, I mean you clearly see the large national retailers, but we were able to move early on this, and I think the nice, one of the nice things that the independent retailer has is that they can turn on a dime. They can move quickly, and there's less policy slowing down getting these communication pieces on the shelf. So again, combined with the effort we put forward with Bright Farms and their marketing team and our merchandisers, we got that done. I think independents have already fully embraced this, especially when they're have a large footprint in organics already. This product makes good sense, and it's not at the expense of organics. I think it just draws more consumers to the high quality selection of both CEA and organic salads. The food service piece, yeah, it's just like trying to sell organics into the food service supply chain. It's difficult. It's going to take a lot more work.
Okay. Thank you very much. Jonathan, at Four Seasons, organic is obviously central to your business. You're one of the largest organic distributors on the East Coast. Both organic and CEA leafy greens tend to go after a very similar consumer. How do you view CEA leafy greens in the context of organic produce? And what do you think are some of the shared benefits between the two?
Yeah, it's been interesting, Four Seasons and a lot of our committed organic customers, I'll call the natural food stores that are selling 100% organic produce. There's a real commitment to organic for the restoration of the soil and for making a positive impact on the environment in the dirt. And so I don't see that going away from some of the real believer organic centric stores and consumers. But where CEA leafy greens have been introduced to a number of retailers, it has not. It's been mentioned before. It really has not impacted the organic salad movement negatively. It's been more of an and. So we don't think about it as an either or, like, hey, pesticide-free indoor grown greens are better than organic, or organic's better. It's more of a, hey, these are two unique ways of achieving sustainable food. And let's let the consumer decide based on their preferences and experiences. So we see it as an and. And then Whit, help me with your second part of the question there again.
Oh, just discussing or getting your take on some of the shared benefits between organic and CEA leafy greens.
Yeah,
obviously there's some overlap there, so if you could just expand on that.
Absolutely, and I think one of the aspects with many of the CEA, I can't speak to all, but many of the CEA leafy greens producers is the fact that it's controlled environment. It can be grown without pesticide, and so for that consumer that's looking to avoid pesticide exposure in their diet, organic and the CEA can be some common options. So that's probably some overlap, and I think the types of products grown indoor here in the leafy green sets are a little bit more, I'd say, progressive in the taste. Tender greens, baby items, broad spectrum of colors and tender greens. And so where the normal conventional salad set is very field romaine and field iceberg heavy and cabbage heavy, you know, that's what we're getting in that conventional set. And so that's another overlap. But there are some consumers that are just going to really want to stay committed to an organic, certified organic logo on their product. But we're definitely seeing that there's lots of consumers excited to support greens grown near them and something that's accessible to them locally year round, which is not something that's always achievable here in the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast.
Understandable. Just a quick reminder for our viewing audience, if you do have any questions, please feel free to utilize that Q&A panel, and we can get to those once we conclude the discussion up here. You've all, mentioned this already, and obviously the effects of the current pandemic that we're all experiencing cannot be overstated. To say that it's been disruptive to our supply chain on a national level, needs no further mention, frankly. But I think one of the biggest topics in the news that's come up, and it's certainly affected our industry specifically in terms of fresh food and fresh produce, is the disruptions to the supply chain and what that really means having a centralized supply chain and what can happen to it. One of the more prominent examples of what's happened within the meat industry over the last couple months specifically, but the produce industry has also faced its own set of challenges, unquestionably. And for the audience, just what I mean when I say centralized supply chain, it's that the majority of production is happening in just a few places and under just a few companies. When a disruption happens to a centralized supply chain, it can cause massive shortages and disruptions that affect everywhere, not just certain localities. For our panelists, how do you see CEA leafy greens in terms of its impact in the industry as a decentralized supply chain, and how does that fit into your strategy to build a more resilient, safe, secure, clean, domestic, add adjective right there, to what basically, how could this possibly shape what supply chains look like in the future? Nick, let's start with you.
I would just say that our experience so far with CEA has proven that it can be both successful and safe during moments like these. We have not yet experienced as much disruption because of that, and especially as it gets closer to local. I mean, I think consumers today are a bit more educated on from where things are grown, and so they know, where tropical is typically coming from. They think about California, they pay attention a little bit more to what's the weather in Florida for a season. And so anything that we can do inside of this space to have more consistency of supply is great. And when that consistency comes from closer to home, it's great even more so. I mean, 10 years ago, greenhouse grown really was all about tomatoes and peppers, but now it's expanded quite a bit. You've got herbs, you have berries, you have a lot of different things that are inside of that. So I see it as bolstering the security of the supply chain whenever things go sideways.
Okay. And Greg, over to you.
Yeah, much of the same. I think for us, our customers expect us to have a stable supply chain no matter what the situation, including this COVID-19 response. The more we can diversify our sourcing, whether that means growing regions, growing environments, the type of growing practices, the number of suppliers, the brands that we offer, this just adds to that ability to diversify and as a result, give our customers the supply they need, even when the supply chain is challenged. I think just like organics, traceability is important. Putting codes, scan codes and PLUs on product is important for the retailer so they know what's going through the front end. They can correctly count their sales, but also in case of any foodborne illness, being able to track it back. I watched the session yesterday on CEA leafy greens, and boy, it sure looks like they've got a solid handle on from the seed right through to the shelf on tracing things back. So for our customers, those kind of disciplines make them comfortable that we're working with the right suppliers.
Got it. And Jonathan, your thoughts?
Well, in our nation's current situation, I think it's just a wonderful reminder about diversity is so important. Diversity. And when it comes to the supply chain, having a variety of sources and sources that are separate from a central pinch point That's not only a food safety thing, but it's a fill rate and just some good alternates for whatever can happen in business. But I want to share a story from a produce director conversation I had with a produce director of an independent retail group about this. Is like, you know, John, I can just count on it. Every Easter and every Thanksgiving, I get bad quality arugula. They're going through transition. And, you know, even though it has a code date of XYZ, it's always going bad before that. It's getting yellow or I'm getting cut. And he said the idea of being able to have steady supply of high quality arugula all year long, that is very attractive to the retailer. And so I think that's a really just practical example of one of the benefits here of CEA when greenhouses are located near the marketplace they're going to be sold in, and you can turn that growth around in 2, 3, 4 weeks with the growing cycle.
Okay, thank you. Greg, this is for you. How would you say the recent shift, or have you seen a recent shift in consumer behavior or customer behavior, and how has it impacted CEA demand since the onset of the COVID pandemic?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest trends is local. Our strength, we've been in business for over 120 years. In the past, it used to be bringing in product from all over the country and buying, selling. Our buying, selling expertise now is really focused on local supply. Most of the large retailers have found that they can buy just as well from the large suppliers buying direct, but we still offer a lot of value when simplifying local, getting access to local product. And these CEA leafy greens touch right on the consumer trend of, you know, and especially in this environment, right? It's a bit anti big corporation. So they want to know that we're working and supporting with local suppliers. We do. We can help those local growers with marketing. Although in the case of the CEA leafy greens, you see some of the best marketing in the industry out there. So they're not short of marketing on the CEA leafy greens. But I think it really addresses the food miles, right? Consumers want local, and they want to make sure we're taking care of the environment. I think that's part of local. But consider the reduction in food miles at these facilities, whether they be indoor or greenhouse operations. I mean, they're literally right next door to the distribution centers of the retailers or the retailers' stores themselves. So I think that's the winning consumer trend for CEA and leafy greens.
Got it. Jonathan, your thoughts?
I totally agree with Greg's points there about, you know, the just focus on local. In the immediate moment, you know, there's still a drive towards picking up things that are packaged. And even in some of the types of stores that made, you know, a very firm commitment to reducing use of packaging, the moment here and during the pandemic has kind of caused a shift back towards things that, hey, in a consumer's mind, no one else has touched this. This is ready for me. And I can just pick it up and go, keep moving. Also, we've seen these products very successful as retailers prop up curbside pickup and online delivery because they're just easy and effective to see on a website and then click purchase and have as part of your basket there to either be delivered to your home or picked up curbside. It really fits well into that scenario with the marketing story and the packaging. And I guess the last component that CEA is on trend with is the, you know, consumer taste. Bright, fresh herbs, salad greens with, you know, progressive flavors and textures. And so I think that's on trend.
And Nick, any thoughts?
Maybe I'll pick up where Jonathan left off. It was a good conversation. CEA is definitely on trend, but so is convenience, I think, and that's what Jonathan was saying. And when you combine the two of those, and by the way, it usually is combined, but that makes a difference for, you know, what is for dinner tonight or what is going to be packed, you know, for lunch tomorrow, whatever that might look like in the mind of the consumer. So I love that trend. I think it's here to stay. And I would just offer that, CEA or hothouse, it's still a very young category. Like there is a lot of growth to be had on the supplier side and on the retailer side. So when you think of the progressive flavors, when you think of really anything, there's still a lot of innovation to be had. There's still, I think, items that can be brought into it. And this COVID-19 pandemic has proven that to be true, as customers have spent more time exploring and trying to have a bit more diversity into the meals that they're preparing for themselves.
Got it. The leafy greens industry in particular has been hit by some fairly substantial recalls over the last few decades. 2018 to 2019 saw some very large recalls of romaine lettuce that wiped out a lot of salads off the shelves of supermarkets for weeks on end. The most recent romaine recall in November of last year, for the first time ever, the CDC and the FDA specifically noted that CEA leafy greens would be exempt from the recall and did not pose a health threat to consumers. How can the CEA leafy greens industry serve as a solution to addressing the food safety concerns with leafy greens? And do any of you look to CEA as a model for the future of food safety? And Nick, we'll lead off with you.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the answer is yes, I do see it as a model. When you think of just from a sustainability standpoint, less chemical usage, there's a lot of things to love about CEA products, but the surety of supply, especially now that it's exempt from these massive recalls, which, they just suck when they happen. There's not one person who's happy about those, from the consumer to the grower to those of us trying to sell it. They're awful. So it is a big deal. And I think that's why you see shelf space changing a little bit inside of specific categories where that's taking place, because inevitably there will be something else that happens. I think any good merchant is preparing for the what if scenario. Any company like ours who is really, really focused on quality assurance and food safety is trying to have contingency planning. CEA offers yet another lever that you can pull so that you can protect surety of supply while also protecting the consumer.
Greg, I'd love to get your thoughts on this.
Yeah, same. It's absolutely part of our plan. When the large centralized growing operations have these type of failures, I guess, or supply chain failures, we're in a great place to bring CEA leafy green products to our customers. And every time that happens, we're just further demonstrating the value of these CEA leafy greens. Yes, absolutely.
Jonathan, your thoughts?
Not a lot to add beyond Nick and Greg's great comments. Perhaps just one thought might be that, challenge forces us to get better. And this is one of those avenues. And so it's not the only avenue, but it's one of those avenues. And since there's other benefits, that's what makes it so exciting. But it shouldn't stop us from really pushing towards safety in all areas of fresh produce.
Got it. Great. Well, gentlemen, that's it for our question, or our panel portion of the thing today. I'm going to open it up to the Q&A from the audience, and Marnie's done a great job of forwarding me some we've already received. And this is for all three of you, so we'll go one by one. Do you believe the future of agriculture is headed towards more localized CEA production rather than more traditional outdoor agriculture? And as a follow-up to that, would that create a more sustainable food supply chain? And therefore, is that what you think consumers are demanding? Greg, let's start with you.
I don't want to answer that question. No, I think I'll refer to yesterday's session, the CEA workshop. The example was given of the tomato industry, where at one time, at least at the retail level, you could not find a hothouse tomato. They were coming in overseas, and over time, it's hard to find a field-grown tomato in a retail operation. I always like to think there's a place for everybody. There's enough room for all of us. But it's hard to predict. Does this become the sole and only way that we farm, not just for leafy greens, but for all products? And I don't know about that yet. I think it's beyond me to take a shot at that right now. The message from all of us, Nick and Jonathan, is that it's providing growth. It's providing consumers what they want. And it's not just growth within CEA leafy greens, but organics and conventionals. It's drawing more attention to produce. That's great. for all of us? It's a pretty interesting question. I'll leave it at that. I don't know.
Okay. Jonathan, any thoughts?
I think you're going to see more CEA, and I think we're starting to see the opportunity to take transportation across great distances and prop up production near where the people are going to consume it. And so, for us in the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast, we have seasons. That's, we can only do outdoor farming so much of the year. And we have these huge metropolitan areas that, yes, they can drive 2 hours to get to farms, but having something near them, that's a story. So, leafy greens, perhaps berries. We're going to see probably some more berries indoor, and the continued growth of, peppers, cucumbers, tomatoes.
Okay. Nick, any comments?
I like Greg's comment. I'll just say ditto on that one. I don't want to be said that I'm the one who has the answer. I think there's space for both CEA and open land growing. I mean, to be very honest, it's a consumption of fruit and veg that's on trend. That's what's growing. It's transparency that's on trend. That's what customers are asking for. It's diversity that is craved as well. Not just like what you're accustomed to, but you still want to be surprised every now and then, whether it's tropical fruit or whatever it is that you might come in and see. And I think that smart retailers are trying to provide all of that, but doing so in a way that's authentic to whatever their brand is. CEA absolutely is on a growth trajectory. If you call it a category, then it's young, it's growing. But to say that it's going to be, the only way of the future would be probably unwise to state.
Nick, another question from the audience. Beyond leafy greens, do you see CEA production going into other vegetables? You'd mentioned tomatoes and herbs. Do you see CEA growing into other categories, if you will?
I mean, the answer is yes. There's some things that still have to be on open land farming, like it hasn't been solved yet. But that's what I love about this industry. If you think of agriculture, if you think of growing and farming, genius people are doing that. Students are still going to college. FFA is still a thing, and it's still important, and that needs to continue. So I'm convinced that innovation is going to go into that. My favorite example recently would be, our own herbs. So they've gone to CEA for a private label for Nature's Promise. That's a big move for us, and we're happy about that. And so it's going to continue, I'd imagine.
Jonathan, do you see the same trend, CEA going into other vegetables?
Other vegetables, it seems like the ones that we've mentioned so far, the leafy greens and herbs, and then followed by some of the other ones that have been established, peppers, cucumbers, tomatoes. But berries is probably the one I think we've got our eye on, where the growing of indoor berries is going to be probably one of the next things. And I'd like to echo what Nick said. There's diversity in how we grow and so forth, and but also the innovation. I think that's a welcome thing.
Okay, Greg, any comments?
No, just to add that I think if you're betting against or for either extreme, that CEA doesn't make it or CEA becomes the only standard, I think that's probably a bad bet. I hope, just because I love the romance that comes with farming and the dirt, that I'm in the ground myself if one form of farming, any farming, takes over the entire industry.
Okay. Greg, we'll stay with you. What would you like to see more from CEA leafy greens suppliers to grow their presence in your supply chain? What more would encourage more response from consumer demands, things like that?
I'm going to sound like a broken record, but education of the consumer, really. We all respond to the consumer. I don't care if you're an independent retailer, you're a big company like Giant, or one of our other large national retailers. We're responding to the consumer. And I think this COVID response and the product availability that we had locally from the CEA leafy green facilities was a great solution, and consumers are now learning about it. Our independent retailers, they jumped in with both feet. They put signs at the shelf. That's harder for larger retailers to do. I would ask the CEA leafy green growers to really work, and this is beyond me. I'm going to acknowledge that I'm not a marketing expert, but boy, take advantage of every opportunity you can to educate the consumer on the features and benefits that you're delivering here. Jonathan talked about the taste profiles, the textures. I mean, they're as good as anybody's. They're really quite remarkable. Talk to the consumers about, we are truly local. We might be a big company and operates in many cities across the country, but we are local to your city. We are hiring people. We're creating jobs. That's important to them. Talk about the fact that you're taking food miles out of the supply chain, which right now, coming from our great border countries in Mexico and Canada, and a huge amount of production out of California, there's a lot of food miles there. So yeah, I would spend every penny you had available, and I would guess that it's probably social media that you'll get your most bang for the buck, really targeting audiences there.
Jonathan, any thoughts on what leafy greens, CEA leafy green suppliers could do to increase their presence in the supply chain?
So I'm going to kind of answer that question in terms of connecting to the marketplace. So to get the products to the shelves, the options are start up your own self-distribution or find partners to help you do that. And so like Four Seasons, that's where we can help connect the dots. If CEA growers want access to a certain customer base, they should sell that customer base and then find out who can help them get that there with products that are already traveling there. And I think that creates efficiencies in the supply chain. So that's I think one of the comments I wanted to offer there.
Okay, Nick, any comments on that?
Yeah, I think I like what both said. What I would add to it is I'm looking for better packaging. I'm looking for less plastic. I'm looking for specifically less plastic. Our sustainability goals for this company require us to reduce packaging across everything. And if that's, non-consumer facing packaging and the way that it's shipped, let's find a way. Let's be smart. Let's be innovative. Let's put a little bit of money and research into making things that are better for the earth after use as well.
Okay. Another question from the audience for Nick. The Giant produce leadership team was one of the very first to embrace and invest in local suppliers. Do you think that's changed consumers' perception of Giant, and have you seen an impact on, with that kind of loyalty?
Well, I know you said questions are anonymous, but that sounds like a setup for my own team to answer that. They're an extraordinary team, and they have been on the front foot, I think, of innovation and local relationships. What we see from our post-transaction research, from the consumer panels and everything else, is that their perception of our entire brand, not just inside of produce, but the entire brand has incredible halo because of what we've done with local. We are finally getting credit for it. I mean, we've done it kind of in the background for many years. It predates my legacy leading the company, but we've talked about it and we've educated on it much more assertively and much more transparently over the last couple of years. And that has had a direct improvement in our brand health scores and in, post-transaction feedback. So I think that the answer is definitely yes. And we're looking for more, right? And it's not just local. I mean, I just want to reiterate, I think Jonathan said it, but the diversity of supply chain is very important. The big guys, the big players still absolutely matter. Spot buys still absolutely matter. If there's excess and we can get a deal on it, our customers love to save money as well. And so our buyers are out there scouring, ports and markets and everything else to find out where we can get that. That's not going to change, but the focus on local, the prevalence of it, putting it inside of our consumer-facing communication, both in ad, on digital, with our pickup, our delivery, Giant Direct business, the whole of it. Yeah, I think it's definitely made a difference.
Okay, and maybe we'll work with the tech wizards at United Fresh to reverse engineer who posed that question. We can unmask them or something. Another question from the audience. This is for all three of you. Can you or would you like to speak to the price differential between CEA and outdoor grown produce? If it is significant, is the consumer receptive to paying that price difference? Jonathan, you want to go first?
The retail price points on the shelf are in line between premium conventional and organic. So the retail price points are in line with the rest of the category. So where the value in the supply chain, for someone here on the East Coast, I imagine more that's going back into greenhouse infrastructure than going into freight across the country. But we've seen price points for the leafy green retail salads very similar.
Got it. Greg, any comments?
I think if there's any hesitation by consumers because of a higher price, I think that will flush itself out with, again, education, but I think importantly, economies of scale. As these CEA operators learn over time and they expand, they'll get the advantage of economy of scales to deliver a product to the retailer that the retailer can take a fair margin and the consumer feels good about the investment they make in that purchase.
Got it. Nick, any thoughts?
Not necessarily on that. I would just say that investing in promotion is probably important inside of this to drive trial. I won't go into our particular pricing strategy and how we handle the different costs and everything else, but what I will say for the benefit of anybody listening right now, especially those growers, you got to drive trial and you've got to look for repeat buyers. You can't just say, hey, we sold a few cases this week. What is the repeat of that? So retailers that have loyalty data can be really, really valuable partners in understanding what is the right mechanism to promote on. And if you're going to invest in anything, I would say that would be a smart place to go.
Got it. Thank you. Another question from the audience for all three of our panelists. Beyond educating the consumer, are there any areas where you think academic scientific research would help CEA production in further penetrating the market? Greg, you want to lead off?
Sure, I think it's been done before. It's to show if there are nutritional advantages. I think that would be a big win for any product in produce, and definitely if there's a competitive advantage that CEA leafy greens deliver in terms of more vitamin D, more vitamin A, more health benefits. So you could tie it directly to health through scientific study. Always goes a lot farther than conjecture and opinion.
Got it. I think that might be it for our audience questions. I'd like to open it up to all three of you gentlemen. If you have any final thoughts or any calls to action as the marketplace evolves and the supply chain evolves and CEA, and specifically leafy greens from CEA, continues to grow. What do you see in the future? What do you want to leave the audience with? Nick, why don't we lead off with you?
Yeah, I would just to hammer a few things that I've already said. It's a young category, if you call it a category. It's growing, so I think it's smart to lean into it. I love what Jonathan said about berries. I think that's really smart. I love what Greg said about not trying to bet on one or the other. The diversity of supply, I think that's smart as well. But anything that we can do to have less pesticide, less herbicide, and kind of more of how nature intended is a really good thing. It leads to nutrient dense products. And I think consumers are getting quite clever and smart. Transparency, the availability of research on what the brand actually is, it's available. And the emerging generation of shoppers, they do the homework. They don't just look and see what's on deal right now. They want to know who is producing and where it is being produced and what actions are inside of that, which leads to the whole education, and I think leads to an opportunity for consumer communication.
Greg, any final thoughts?
No, just that we talked about it earlier. There's tremendous opportunity beyond retail that's really untapped at this point with CEA leafy greens. I think that's an exciting opportunity that we all ought to embrace as a produce industry.
Got it. Jonathan.
Yeah, CEA leafy greens definitely provides an opportunity for yet another avenue towards sustainability in a separate lane from certified organic and supporting regenerative soil. And production near where the consumer is, and particularly in areas that have these heavy seasons like we do, having something beyond mushrooms and storage potatoes and storage apples to offer our local centric consumers year round, that's exciting.
Got it. Well, gentlemen, I think that about wraps it up. Again, if you have any final thoughts, this is our time to do so. But on behalf of a Now You Know and the Snack Magazine, I'd like to thank again Matt Grant and Marnie. Thank you very much for inviting us to be a part of this, and Nick, Jonathan, Greg, thank you very, very much for participating in this somewhat hybrid version of a fresh produce trade show panel. But I hope you had a good time, and thank you again.
Thank you, Whit, for leading us through that. And thanks, Nick, Jonathan, and Greg for sharing all your insights with us. And of course, Marnie for organizing the panel for us. I know there's quite a few questions we weren't able to get to, so I do encourage you to head over to the CEA Food Safety Coalition booth over on the expo floor. And Marnie will be there, and she's such a great resource for us all. Would also love to remind you that coming up next, we do have a retail food service general session. So that's going to begin at noon Eastern. So join us as we meet the produce heroes of today, the winning retail managers, and we'll also honor 9 winning chef and food service operators. Thank you so much for your time, and we'll see you there.